Two psych ward workers take Ted Radford into a room where a doctor has prepared a makeshift cinema for Radford. Radford's mental instability stems from the man's obsession with his iconic slasher movie, The Dark Beneath, becoming an unhealthy obsession of his. The doctor starts the film in the room for Radford, supposedly something that Radford wanted all along. Radford's doctor meets up with Dr. Dave Wayne, who feels uncertain about the current procedure to help Radford detach from his movie. Meanwhile, Radford is unsupervised as strange things keep happening in the room. First, the lights go out. Then he makes eerie expressions before biting a piece of. Doctors discuss the procedure outside, but Dr. Wayne leaves the facility for urgent business. Inside the room, Radford begins writing down strange symbols on the floor, simultaneously chanting something to himself in whispers. The door opens, and the room is empty, leaving only the writing and blood behind. The window is covered in blood, but the doctor saw nothing when he entered. He turns around and sees something that forces a scream out of him. The next day, Dr. Wayne comes to the facility. The scene looks like an absolute bloodbath, as Dr. Wayne cannot find anyone in the facility. Dr. Wayne runs around looking for any sign of life, but despite blood scattered everywhere, no single body is in sight. Kenny, Bridget, and Rachel are managing the theater for the midnight shows. 5 years after the incident at the psych ward, the theater is allowed to play his movie, The Dark Beneath. Bridget is managing the venue, so she asks about Kenny's whereabouts. Kenny makes offhanded comments about the cinema before going to the front door to check tickets and customers. Outside, Babe and Harley show up for a movie date. The biker's loud entrance leaves no one impressed as he walks in and hits on Bridget. Uninterested, he asserts his male ego by reaching into the popcorn machine and taking a sample before requesting a large box. The couple then enters the theater while waiting for the movie's showing. Bridget's brother Timmy shows up at the theater to watch a movie. Kenny turns the young boy away, as the venue's policy prohibits underage individuals from watching movies past 11 at night. Timmy insists he should be allowed to stay, so Kenny calls for Bridget, requesting that she handle her persistent little brother. Bridget comes over and asks her brother a few questions. Timmy's babysitter left the house early, letting him roam free and eventually leading the little boy to think he could sneak in a movie at the cinema and return home with his older sister. Bridget is not too worried about Timmy's deviance, but does not allow him to watch the film as it will frighten him into having night. Timmy protests, but he respects his sister enough to listen eventually. Bridget asks Kenny to take the boy home, but Timmy insists he can return alone. Bridget allows it, so the young boy heads out. On the way, he bumps into Josh, Bridget's boyfriend. Josh planned a movie with some friends to hang out with his girlfriend. Bridget is caught off guard by his appearance, but her shift stops her from being able to hang out with her boyfriend. Kenny steps up, begging to be put in charge while Bridget enjoys a movie date with her boyfriend. The couple walks into the theater, where Babe and Harley are seated. The high school alumni sit together as Bridget brings up the impending issue of why she thinks Josh is there to see her. Josh expects an acceptance from a university away from their hometown, so Bridget believes he is just trying to gently break the news to her. Josh tries to convince her to come with him, but Bridget cares deeply about her brother and does not want to leave their settled life for her desire to be with her boyfriend. Josh finally decides he would much rather have Bridget in his life than let the grandeur of a big university far away take his attention. Bridget is touched, so she leans in for a kiss. The couple is interrupted by Mario and Samantha. Mario makes crude comments about his girlfriend Samantha, but is not too bright as he makes remarks without thinking twice. People are leaving the theater after realizing that the movie being screened is 40 years old. Detective Behrens is outside, preparing to go in, as he believes that the incident at the psych ward can be explained if he attends the screening for Radford's movie. He gets a call from his colleague at the police department, but he insists that the way to explain the disappearance of 70 people from a psych ward is for him to attend the first screening of Radford's movie after several years, as a possible way to catch the obsessed man. Inside the theater, Sully joins the group for the movie experience. Sully is slightly dull, but seems the most interested in the prospect of watching the movie. Rumors have spread that murder was involved in the movie's production, explicitly mentioning that Ted Radford was locked up at the psych ward for such allegations. While the police never disclosed accurate information to the public, people have claimed that the psych ward incident was either a mass escape or a cult massacre. Bridget shuts down the discussion, but Sully leaves one more comment about Radford last being seen alive watching the film. The detective goes to the register to get his movie ticket. He gets a ticket as Rachel calls Kenny to issue it. Barron shows the staff a picture of Radford, demanding that the two of them let the man in and inform him if he appears. The movie finally begins. Shot in grayscale, it starts with some eerie piano music. During the introductory title sequence, TME texts Bridget that he got home safely, so Bridget loosens up and starts watching the movie. The movie starts with Bobby driving around 3 women to see Jimi Hendrix in New York. One of the girls is tripping on, while the rest are getting more annoyed with the time it is taking. The group has fallen off course, eventually blowing out a tire and getting stuck in the middle of nowhere without a spare. They inspect the damage, eventually realizing that they are stranded. Meanwhile, the people at the theater keep commenting about the movie but are irrelevant to its plot. The comments are harmless, but Harley gets annoyed with the teenagers ruining his movie experience. In the movie, Bobby finds a ranch near the site of the car's breakdown. The ranch is rather ominous, with a rotting bison carcass outside to greet its guest. Simultaneously, someone is watching him approach the front door from the vents. Bobby rings the bell, eventually being greeted by Lemire at the door. The teenagers at the theater are still loud, making Harley even more annoyed. Bobby is now sitting on the woman's couch as he waits for some mechanics from the garage to come and help him and his friends. The woman initially acts unaware, but then reassures Bobby that his problem will be solved in no time. The two sit awkwardly together on the couch. The detective notices someone entering the theater. Suspecting Radford, he approaches the man, but realizes that Dr. Wayne came by to watch the first screening of the cursed movie after 5 years. Their interaction makes Harley even more annoyed as he turns around to swear at them. The slasher, or Radford, from the movie is sharpening his drill-like weapon. The detective and the doctor sit together and talk about Ted. They both expect the man to appear at the screening of his movie after such a long time. Bobby is sitting alone when he realizes something is wrong in the house. He tries to call out to the woman in the house, but hears no response. He stands in front of a door in anticipation, then immediately gets cut down by the slasher. The scene is immensely graphic, as Samantha is now uncomfortable and scared, asking that Mario sits with her for the rest of the movie. The doctor and the detective are still talking about Radford, unable to give any logical explanation for the psych ward incident outside of the supernatural. At the register, the soda runs out while Kenny tries to chat up Rachel. Rachel decides to flirt with the boy, as she convinces him to go downstairs into the basement to refill the soda tank. Inside the theater, Bridget notices that Lemire has scars on her arm. The sight makes her uncomfortable, to the point that she demands that Josh leaves the theater with her. He is hesitant, but goes outside with her. Josh checks up on her, but Bridget reveals that the scars on Lemire's arms remind her of her father's physical past. Josh comforts his girlfriend, as she seems to feel better with his reassurance. In the movie, the three women are still waiting for Bobby, all while the slasher cleans his weapon in preparation for his next victim. Kenny is filling the soda tank, scaring himself in the eerie business. As he startles himself, the screen in the cinema flashes as the slasher suddenly disappears in a flash of light, and Kenny appears in front of all the viewers. No one identifies him, but the slasher is now in the real world before Kenny. He tries to run away, but bumps into him and falls on his back. The slasher grabs the boy as he begs for his life, until his cries remain in vain, with a merciless stab finishing him off for good. The two of them are now back in Lemire's house, Kenny's body being dragged along by the slasher. Samantha is even more frightened inside, while Josh is outside of the theater, trying to convince Bridget to come back. She protests, starting a minor argument with her boyfriend, until she eventually budges and goes back inside with her persistent boyfriend. Dr. Wayne talks more about Radford. Radford enjoyed scaring people, while his murder spree seemed like some strange way of immortalizing his work. Dr. Wayne emphasizes, however, that Radford had given up on his own identity, primarily identifying as the slasher, with the sole purpose of inciting fear in people. Sully has fallen victim to the slasher. Rather, his pants have, as he defecated in fear. The rest of the teenagers eventually bully him into going to the bathroom as the stench worsens. In the movie, finally, one of the women goes to Lemire's house to look for Bobby. Sully goes to the rundown theater's bathroom. The lights flicker in the filthy restroom as they eventually go out completely. He tries to navigate through the darkness, but he is blind in the darkness until he eventually reaches the handle of the door. The door is locked, so Sully assumes that Mario is playing a prank on him. Meanwhile, in the theater, the light flashes on screen once again. The slasher is now in the bathroom with Sully, stalking him from behind. Sully believes it to be Mario, completely unresponsive, but still frightened as he slowly backs away. The slasher then stabs through Sully's chest, immediately ending his life. The scene changes as the slasher drags the new victim's body through the corridors of Lemire's house. The teenagers all make a lot of noise, as they are amused by Sully's cameo in the movie. They do not realize that the events in the movie are taking place in the real world, letting their ignorance make light of the situation as they laugh loudly at the demise of their friend. This disturbs Harley as he starts shouting at the teenagers, necessitating the detective to reveal his identity as a cop and demand that everyone return to their seats. Rachel looks around for Kenny, realizing he has been gone too long. She looks inside the bathroom and finds a puddle of blood, immediately losing her cool as she screams in fear. The woman has reached Lemire's house in the movie, but the scene cuts off to show the slasher stalking Rachel in the lobby. She tries to call the police, but the slasher gets to her as the phones are no longer working. The rest of the group go to the front desk and find Rachel missing. All the teenagers believe that Sully is playing a prank, but the detective knows that something more serious is going on. Everyone but the detective goes to the bathroom, while the detective inspects a puddle of blood left behind by Rachel. He tries to call the police department, but there seems to be no way to contact anyone outside, as his cell phone is not working properly. In the restroom, everyone is playing around with a piece of Sully, kicking a piece of him around. Eventually, Harley loses his cool and starts shouting at everyone, thinking he is being duped into a reality television show. His manic episode is disrupted by the detective revealing his identity and demanding that all the civilians exit the theater, as the situation has gotten more severe. While no one takes him seriously at first, Bridget is more convinced by the detective's deduction that Kenny, Sully, and Rachel have fallen victim to a murder spree. Dr. Wayne enters the bathroom, startling the on-edge detective, but eventually helping him escort everyone out. As they all leave, Samantha notices someone inside the theater. The detective checks up first, trying to find his suspect murderer and bracing for combat. He notices someone under the seats, but realizes it's only a child. Timmy stands up from underneath the seats. The detective is more disappointed, but Bridget realizes that her brother went against his word and is now trapped with everyone in this dire situation. The groups try to exit the theater, but the main doors at the entrance do not budge. They also try the emergency exit, but they also do not work. Meanwhile, in the movie, one of the women is in the house drying up after a spill. Lamir is creepily helping the girl, with apologetic comments in a strangely grim tone, but the woman suspects nothing. As she begins to clean up in the shower, the slasher watches her through a hole in the wall. The detective decides that the situation requires everyone to become aware of the psych ward incident to understand what they might be finding themselves in currently. As he explains it, Timmy goes into the theater to watch the movie. While he starts interested in just the scene before him, he is eventually frightened away by the slasher claiming another victim in the movie. With that, the film flashes light again, and Radford is back in action in the real world. Harley is annoyed at the detective and the doctor for not informing anyone of a possible serial murderer's visit, but Bridget is more concerned about her brother, who is not with the group. Timmy walks in and stands at the door, staring at the group with a blank face. Suddenly, the doors slam open and push Timmy away. The slasher now stands before everyone, as he immediately reaches for the doctor and holds him in his arm. Dr. Wayne tries to converse with the slasher, but the detective prepares his gun to protect everyone from the criminal. However, before the detective lands a shot on the slasher, the doctor's throat is slit open right before everyone. The shot lands, but the slasher is alright, and has taken the doctor with him inside the movie. The detective enters the movie theater, but realizes the slasher is gone with his next victim. The detective walks back to the rest, where he feels paranoid about the situation. He landed the shot with his pistol, but the slasher seems to have sustained no injury. Harley fights the cop about his poor decision not to shoot the head, but the detective loses his composure as the two begin arguing. Samantha breaks their quarrel, but Harley is angry, demanding that the detective helps everyone out of the cinema. The detective tries to shoot through the glass doors at the entrance, but the bullets ricochet off, as it seems that supernatural powers are at play, forcing everyone to remain in the cinema. Timmy reveals that there is possibly an exit available for the group in his sister's office that should still be open. While everyone is still on edge, Bridget decides they should all try the window. Josh realizes that he needs to protect his girlfriend in this situation. Bridget deduces that the slasher's point of view is the same as the movie screen, implying that someone can keep watch in the theater to warn the rest of the group of the slasher's whereabouts. Josh takes this opportunity to serve as a lookout, promising to protect his girlfriend in their current predicament. Everyone rushes for the window in Bridget's office, as Josh remains in the theater. The group is running up the stairs, but Harley decides to stay back with his girlfriend to keep watch for the rest of the group as a relay. Meanwhile, Josh sees the slasher in the movie claim another victim, along with Lamir. The scene changes to the hallways of the theater, so Josh alerts the rest of the group as Harley relays his message to everyone else. The slasher appears before Harley, who tries to face up against him. The slasher does not react, but Harley decides to run away with Babe. Bridget and her friends finally reach the office, and Samantha is the first to try to escape. The slasher appears behind them as the window slams shut on Samantha's hands. With the woman stuck, the rest of the group realizes their exit is sealed. The detective pulls out his gun and starts shooting. Behind him, Mario tries to help Samantha, but eventually he falters away, realizing that the detective has run out of bullets. The detective stays in place, but the slasher pierces a hole through the cop with no hesitation, then employs that same hole to pierce through Samantha's torso. The two victims appear in the movie as the screen flashes white again, placing the slasher in the real world again. Bridget and Timmy cower in a corner in a storage room as the older sister covers her brother's mouth to make sure he makes no noise. The siblings remain crouched against a box. Bridget is scared out of her mind, with fear written all across her face. Her instinct as her brother's protector makes her take action, but she is scared for her life. She eventually decides to look behind them, slowly turning her face. Instead of the slasher, she sees Josh at the door, finally letting her relax again. Mario dashes into the theater, only for Harley to punch him out. The biker tosses him around until he pulls out a knife. Bridget and Josh see Harley beating Mario up and put an end to it. Harley wants to end Mario's life by leaving Samantha alone, but Bridget deems it unnecessary for more casualty, with the group's numbers already dwindling. Bridget holds Harley's hand, holding the knife away, revealing to the biker that the woman holding him back went through an childhood with a mismanaged father. Bridget talks more about her past and her experience with her father, so Harley decides to listen to her judgment and pulls away. Timmy then points to the theater entrance, realizing a cop is standing outside. They bang at the doors, trying to alert the cop, but he cannot see anything through the transparent doors. Everyone is struggling relentlessly as the cop tries to get in, but realizes the cinema is empty and locked. He then walks away and leaves everyone inside to fend for themselves. With no one to help but themselves, the group plans on how to stop this disaster from unfolding further. They eventually decide to close the movie projector, since it is responsible for their current predicament. The door to the projector room is completely locked, so the only option for the group is to send Timmy in through the vents. Timmy is scared, but Bridget realizes he is the only person who can save them from their current predicament, so she takes him away anyway and requests that the group keep banging at the door. Bridget convinces Timmy and reassures him that he will be fine. She hands him a flashlight as Timmy reluctantly goes into the vents. The young boy crawls around the vents, following the noise of Harley banging at the door. He eventually reaches the ditch in the vents and almost falls inside. He saves himself until the slasher's weapon pieces the metal next surface, alerting the boy of the murderer's presence. He stops to minimize his sound mark until Josh intervenes and subdues Radford. Josh takes the initiative, trying to fight the slasher as the murderer ignores the young man in his path and rushes over to find Timmy. Timmy finally reaches the projector room, meaning that the slasher has no choice but to fight the man before him. Eventually, Josh is forced onto the ground, but Timmy disrupts the projector and saves Josh from meeting his inevitable doom at the hands of the slasher. The group collects in the projector room as they celebrate their victory. Harley hurls profanities at the film, only for a supernatural force to toss everyone outside and begin the recording again. The slasher appears in the hallway. Everyone runs away, eventually leading Bridget and Timmy to be separated. Harley, Babe, and Timmy are all inside a small janitor's closet, where Harley is panting in fear due to his claustrophobia. The slasher notices Harley at the door and pierces his chest right through it. The biker falls flat on the ground, with his girlfriend sobbing miserably. Timmy expresses no emotion as he walks away on his own. The rest of the teenagers are together, as Bridget wants to find her brother. With no plan, Mario suggests that everyone fend for themselves, but Josh does not want to hear anything from him. They all go to the theater to look for Timmy from the slasher's point of view, finding that the slasher is not in the cinema anymore and is back in the movie. While they watch, they realize that the slasher utilizes fear to scout for victims, as the murderer can smell fear from his victim. Radford is back in the real world as the scene shifts back to the cinema. As the murderer walks around the hallways, he finds Babe, who is now defenseless as she succumbs to repeated attacks from the slasher and is taken into the movie like the rest of the victims. Meanwhile, Timmy is walking around the hallways until Radford appears once again. The young boy looks at the slasher and stands in place. With every step Timmy takes backward, the slasher takes a step forward. Timmy eventually runs away, only for Mario to run past him and get caught by the slasher. Radford takes the next victim, as he injects his weapon into a power outlet and electrocutes Mario into oblivion. Josh and Bridget are looking around for Timmy, but struggle to find the young boy as Bridget is now sobbing in fear for her brother's life. Josh tries to comfort his girlfriend, but is interrupted by the slasher making a noise in the hallway. Josh decides to take the initiative and goes after the slasher, who is now backing away as Josh no longer fears the murderer. The slasher disappears, so Josh rushes back to his girlfriend. Having reached her, he sees the murderer about to take his girlfriend's life, eventually succumbing to the fear of losing Bridget and allowing the slasher to toss his weapon at him. Josh falls on the floor, but allows Bridget the opportunity to run away. She leaves the room, and her boyfriend behind as she finds another door to cower behind. Bridget is still miserable, but eventually decides to take the initiative to protect her brother. The slasher spawns back into the theater, claiming another victim, so she decides to get up and look for her brother. Radford eventually finds Timmy, but too late to catch the child as he runs away through the vents. The siblings are together in the theater, and Bridget finds her brother crawling through the seats. They embrace, but Bridget decides to prepare her brother to confront the slasher, as the two need to avoid fear to avoid losing their lives. They both sit cross-legged as the siblings sit down with their eyes closed. Timmy recites the names of a sports team, while Bridget recites biblical verses. The slasher appears behind them, trying to walk over and intimidate the two siblings. His efforts yield no results, so he tries to get as close to Bridget's face as possible to intimidate her with his presence. With no reaction still, Radford walks away, only for Bridget to hesitate and allow the slasher to walk back and claim another victim. Bridget wakes up in a dimly lit room on a metal bed frame. She walks over to a door to seek out and pinpoint her location, only for the slasher to reveal himself on the other side. She cowers away until Radford leaves her alone again. The slasher is sitting in a corner, sharpening his weapon. Bridget hammers at the door handle until she finally breaks it and leaves her cell. She finds the room full of the victims from the psych ward, all tortured and tattered. The slasher is still sharpening his weapon, so Bridget utilizes the opportunity to look around for other rooms and victims. She eventually finds the group at the cinema, where she looks over at everyone until she finds Josh. She embraces her boyfriend, but he warns her and asks her to leave while she can. Bridget finally realizes that she is injured fatally, much like everyone else in the slasher's lair, but her reunion with Josh is cut short by Lemire knocking her out with a rolling pin. Bridget wakes up bound to a bed next to her brother. Timmy is unconscious, so Bridget tries to call out and wake him up, but the slasher stops him as he menacingly stands at the room door. He walks over and threatens to torture the woman before doing so, and, one by one, Bridget screams each time, but eventually realizes that she needs to protect her brother, so she recites more biblical verses to discard her fear. Radford realizes what she is trying to do, so he tosses over the bed to stop her as he reaches for his weapon to finish her off. Suddenly, the woman from the movie appears at the doorway, distracting the slasher momentarily and allowing Bridget to get one lethal stab at his neck. The siblings get out of the murderer's lair and reach the living room of Lemire's house. The woman herself leaps at Bridget, but meets her timely demise at the hands of Timmy, who stabs her with a hook. Bridget breaks free, but the slasher pursues both as they leave the premises. Ranford rushes after the two siblings, but gains little distance until, eventually, Timmy falls on the ground and stops their escape. The two are close to escaping, but Bridget realizes that she needs to make her last stand as Timmy's caretaker and tosses the boy out of the film. Timmy escapes as the movie finishes, and the projector shuts down. The police finally arrive at the scene of this new bloodbath. They mock Timmy's account of what happened, not accepting the supernatural forces quoted by the boy. They escort the young boy out of the theater, as the police seem reluctant to accept any of his stories.